The cops are not to call on a noise complaint at 7:30 because you're watching TV in a hot tub. It's for when somebody jumps over your fence and threatens you. Looks can be deceiving. In today's video, we're going over a teenager who knocked the cookbook out of a man twice his age and twice his size. And the teenager, he was applauded. He was confronted by this man, and with self-defense, he took matters into his own hands. And so he knocked the guy out. Was he justified? Did the guy deserve it? What would you have done? And so watch the video and find out.
Jack Stokes says he didn't want to resort to violence, but when a man refused to leave his property, he was left with no choice. The result was surprising, given that Jack's opponent was twice his age and his size.
And so was he really left with no choice? The guy was on his property and he knocked him out good. But did the guy deserve it, and could it have been resolved in a different fashion? And I'm sure many of you can relate. You have a horrible neighbor. They're calling the cops on you all the time, complaining, causing misery, making it difficult to have happiness and peace and quiet at your own home.
I was actually going to sleep. I had a big day and I was tired, stressed out because I just tested positive for COVID.
And so apparently he's got the C word and he's trying to stay away from other people. But the neighbor, no, I'm not getting off your property. I want to have words with you. I want to talk about how I don't like you as my neighbor.
He was in my neighbour's property, which isn't his property, trying to hit my dogs through the fence. And then I come out and turned all the lights on and I was like, what is going on? And then I went down and I confronted him and I asked him, what is he doing? And then that's where he started getting aggravated.
Your old man owned this house.
Yeah, he did.
And I'm sorry.
Well, you don't need to be sorry.
Well,
I don't expect sympathy from no one.
And so his neighbor is not on his property, arguing with his dogs, and he wakes up, comes out and says, what are you doing? Has a conversation with him. And the man has recently lost his father. He brings it up and says, hey, I knew your father. He passed away. That's sad. And the kid's like, I don't need your sympathy. Just get off of my yard.
Well, then don't come over here threatening me and shit like that.
I'm not threatening you, buddy.
You did. You grabbed a hold of me and told me you're gonna up.
And so the kid says, you grabbed a hold of me and said you were going to cookbook me up. He says, no, I wasn't threatening you. Sounds like a threat to me. And so his girlfriend is filming this at this point because they want to have proof that he didn't do anything wrong. Have to have the evidence.
You get over this fence and I'll call on the cops, mate.
All the cops.
I
You
will.
won't even make it over the fence.
All the cops.
I will.
And then the guy climbs over the fence after being told, don't come onto our property or we'll call the cops. He says, we'll call the cops. Okay, he flops over the fence. He says, I will. He's in his 40s, appears to be drunk. I don't know. And he flops over the fence after being told not to come here and saying, I'll call the cops. What should have been done right here is call the cops. That's what they're for. The cops are not to call on a noise complaint at 7:30 because you're watching TV in a hot tub. It's for when somebody jumps over your fence and threatens you. At this point, call the cops. This could have ended bad. The guy could be armed. He might have a knife, a gun, pistol. We don't know. You need to be careful. You never know what may happen. I don't care if you're a trained UFC fighter. You see somebody jumping over your fence saying, I'm going to call the cops, and they continue. You can't assume that that person is not armed. You might think you can handle yourself, that you can take care of business, that you're a macho man. But if that person pulls out a gun, shoots, what defense are you going to use then?
Jack says Mike's initial gripe was that the teenager had recently moved sandbags on a neighbour's property to try and stop it from flooding.
And so the reason the man hopped over the fence was apparently he was upset that the guy had put in some sandbags to prevent flooding and left them there. And then that sand had trickled over into his lawn, made it not so appealing. Sounds like he had a legitimate reason to talking to him, saying, you can't leave sandbags there. It's going to ruin my lawn. But is it appropriate to do so at night when the guy's saying, don't come onto my property or I'll call the cops? I don't think so. You can't just force yourself onto someone's property and ask to talk to them, especially when they're saying, I will call the cops. At that point, he should have said, now's not the time. I will talk to you tomorrow.
His argument was after it stopped raining, why didn't you put them back? Because it put silt on his grass.
And looking at this teenager standing in his garage, he doesn't look very intimidating. In comparison to the other man, twice his size, he looked pretty scary. But I personally believe this guy, he knew what was up. He was probably a trained fighter, knew exactly what to do. He says he had to defend himself since his father had passed away. Probably was practicing, perhaps boxing, martial arts, who knows? But he didn't seem to be intimidated in the slightest. And to me, he should have been. You see someone twice your size, the same size, half your size, jumping into your yard? You never know what they might do.
The next complaint was the floodlight.
With the floodlight, he did actually mention it a couple of weeks prior, and I haven't turned it on since for the pure fact of he said that to me. And then I turned it on because he was at the fence.
And his neighbor also complained that he had his floodlights on, that he hated that. And he said since then, he hasn't been putting them on unless he needed to. And he's like, they're on right now. And he's like, yeah, they're on right now because it's dark out in the middle of the night and I'm coming out to talk to you. Why do you think it's on? And so you can see this is not a friendly neighbor, complaining that the guy has his lights on, that he used sandbags, that some of the sand leaked out onto his lawn. It seems like he's complaining a little bit. And from the looks of things, they don't have the most beautiful lawns in the world. I can't imagine that that little bit of sand that trickled down onto his lawn is somehow ruining his property.
Get out of my property. Get out of my property.
Can you please leave?
No, I'm coming and knocking on your door because you get a light shining through my house.
And so the guy's saying, can you please leave? And he's saying it more than once. And at this point, you're supposed to call the police. You don't have to wait. You don't have to keep repeating yourself 15 times. Will you please leave? No. Will you please leave? Are you going to leave? No, no, no. I'm going to knock on your door. You call the cops. Girlfriend's filming this. Hey, girlfriend, call the police right now. Then as you're calling, if he starts putting his hands on you or what have you, then do what you need to do. But I do believe calling the cops at this moment would have prevented a problem from escalating. But you never know what's going to happen. He doesn't want to call the police. He's doing what he thinks he can do to get the guy out peacefully.
So I said, don't come close to me. I've just tested positive to COVID.
Then he warns the guy, I tested positive for the C word. You don't want to go near me. He doesn't care. He continues to approach the house.
Yeah, I got it all. Got your face in it and everything. You come near me and look the out.
Don't touch her.
And then he approaches his girlfriend and he steps in between them. At this point, the guy's gone too far. I'm sure you're all going to agree. He's gone way too far. He's approaching the girlfriend. He doesn't know what he might do. He seems to be drunk. Who knows if he's on drugs? We don't know what's going on. And so he has to act in self-defense.
Don't walk over to it. Get out of my yard. Get out of my yard.
And so you see what he initially does, get out of my yard, and he pushes him. He doesn't hit him right away, he pushes him. Get out of my yard. At that point, the guy should have been like, man, I've gone too far with this kid. I gotta leave. He's pushing me back. Clearly, I'm doing it wrong. He approaches him again. At this point, the kid has had enough. And look what he does. Look at the speed of hands. Bam, bam, bam. Down. My opinion, he got exactly what he deserved. This guy was going way too far for way too long. Perhaps it could have been prevented if they had called the cops initially, but not everyone wants to get the cops involved. That's what they're for. They're not for noise complaints and silliness when it's 7:30 in the night or middle of the afternoon. But if somebody's in your yard intimidating you, acting in a threatening way, that is what the cops are for.
Jack uploaded footage of the incident to social media and it's since gone viral.
Was not expecting to see how it went. It's got like over 400,000 views now.
He then uploaded this to social media saying he was surprised he got over 400,000 views. How is that surprising? When you see actual footage of things that are going on in the real world, people want to see it. All too often, people are faking, staging everything. It's pretend, make-believe. This is what really happened in the real world. People love drama. They love knowing what's going on in other people's lives. And when you can see something like this that ends with a teenager knocking an older, bigger man out, of course people are going to want to watch it. And so it made national news, millions of people talking about it, and it even got to Coach Greg. And so I wanted to make this video to caution people. You never know what can happen. Larger guy sees a smaller guy, says, I'm not worried about this guy. But yet he's a trained fighter. We don't know. Or what if he had a knife, a gun? It could have ended really badly. Be careful. Use the cops when you need to use the cops. Don't think, oh, I shouldn't call. I shouldn't tattletale. If somebody is threatening you in your yard and you're asking them to go and they won't, call the cops. You don't have to settle this in your own hands. But if it's a noise complaint or something silly like your grass is too long, then don't get the cops involved.
People these days, they will judge a book by its cover.
And so the kid's message, don't judge a book by its cover. Exactly. He doesn't look intimidating, doesn't look like he knows what he's doing, but you can't ever tell.
I spoke to Mike over the phone and he told me he's been staying away since the neighbourhood dispute escalated. He says he's feeling remorseful and he wants to apologise to Jack for how he behaved.
And the guy that knocked out, now that he's come to his senses, he's regretful, remorseful, wishes he hadn't done what he'd done. He knows he did wrong. Well, had you listened to the guy when he said, don't keep coming here, stay off my property, none of this would ever happen. And we don't know, perhaps there was alcohol or drugs involved, and when that's happened, all bets are off. Ending it here. GregDoucette.com for coaching. Greg Doucette IBB Pro on Instagram. Watch the bloop. Don't watch the bottom one, just the top one. You can get Delta Sleep, Turkesterone, pre-workouts, pump pre-workouts, stim pre-workouts, so much stuff. You can get it all. Click the link in the description. Also, subscribe to my newsletter. We're giving away tons of free shit. I'll explain that later. Just join it. Click the link in the description. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment for the algorithm. Get my friggin' cookbook, and until next time, I am out.